Finally, I want to leave you with some general tips to think about when you're developing your MVC applications. The first is to go out and learn about the single responsibility principle. This is a design guideline for object-oriented programming, but it really applies to, I think, views as well as C# code and business objects and controllers, and even down to individual methods, like an action method. We've talked about responsibilities already in this module, and we've talked about how adding too many responsibilities inside of a single component reduces the maintainability of that component. Because it's doing too many things, it's harder to come back into a view or into an action method 12 months after we've written it and wrap our head around what it's supposed to be achieving and what it's supposed to do if it's doing too many things. The idea here is to whittle down your abstractions so they're only responsible for one thing, and they do that very well. Another tip is to keep your applications dry. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. Anytime you find something that's duplicated, refactor it to remove that duplication. And again, this applies to views as well as C# code. In views, if we find ourselves copying a block of HTML from view to view to view, we should instead be creating a user control and rendering that user control as a partial inside of all those views. That gives us one place to change that block of HTML instead of going into multiple views to change it. When we're programming in C# code, we have all sorts of wonderful abstractions given us by object-oriented programming to reuse code and remove duplication. So we can use inheritance and polymorphism. We can also use aggregation, which is we'll collect other objects and we'll delegate work to them so that they can be responsible for a single facet of the work. One technique you can use to write better code is to start learning and applying test-driven development if you haven't already. Test-driven development is a great way to uncover responsibilities. For instance, if you're writing test for a business object and you find just reading through the test that that object does a whole lot of different things, it has a lot of different responsibilities. I'm writing test for this and this and this and this. For instance, the action method that we looked at earlier, we'd have to write tests that make sure that it sets the authorization cookie, and it redirects the user, and it validates the model. Just looking through that list of tests, we could say, maybe this action method is doing too much. It's going to be hard to maintain in the future. The refactoring phase of TDD is also a great place where you can review what you're writing and find duplication. And when you're doing TDD, you're going to find the dependencies that your components have. What other classes do they depend on? What calls do they need to make into other APIs and other services, and what databases and file system calls are they trying to use? You can easily find those dependencies and you can isolate them, and that helps to break down the responsibilities of a single class. One book I can recommend to cover all of these topics and software design in general is the Clean Code book by Robert C. Martin. That book doesn't necessarily address C# code. It does have a smattering of Java and Ruby and a couple other languages, but it covers general basic design guidelines for writing good quality maintainable code. And finally, the MVC framework is still very young, and you need to leverage the work that other people are doing. So there are a lot of fantastic projects out there that are available on Codeplex and Google Code and other places that contribute to the MVC project and make it easier to develop with. One that we've used several times in this course is the MVC Contrib project. So don't fall into the trap of always trying to reinvent the wheel. Go out and find what other solutions are out there that someone else has already implemented for you.